pasta was perfect, the wine was expensive, and my wife was about to destroy our marriage. I could tell by the way Jessa kept checking her phone under the white tablecloth at Romano's, the same Italian place where we'd celebrated every anniversary for 12 years. Her manicured fingers drummed against the stem of her wine glass, and that rehearsed look in her green eyes meant trouble. "Miles," she said, setting down her fork with theatrical precision, "we need to talk." I'd been expecting this conversation for months. The late nights at the PR firm, the new lingerie appearing in our laundry, the way she'd started saying I instead of we when discussing weekend plans. "My name is Miles Harren. I'm 41 years old, and I design buildings for a living. Architecture teaches you to notice when foundations start to crack." "I'm listening," I said, twirling linguine around my fork like nothing had changed. Jessa straightened her shoulders, blonde hair catching the candlelight. She'd practiced this speech. "I want an open marriage. Take it or leave it." The couple at the next table glanced over. Jessa had pitched her voice just loud enough to sound dramatic without causing a scene. Always the PR professional, even when detonating her personal life. I set down my fork and reached for my wine. "I'll take it." Her mouth opened slightly. This wasn't the script she'd prepared for. She'd expected tears, begging, maybe a public breakdown that would justify whatever she'd already been doing behind my back. Instead, I raised my glass in a mock toast. "To new beginnings," I said. "Miles, I don't think you understand what I'm... Open marriage. You want the freedom to see other people while maintaining the security of our relationship. I get it." I took a sip of wine, watching her face cycle through confusion, anger, and something that might have been panic. "When do we start?" Her phone buzzed against the table. She glanced at it instinctively, and I caught a glimpse of the name on the screen. Chad Morrison, her boss at the PR firm. The same Chad Morrison who drove a Range Rover and wore suits that cost more than most people's rent. The same Chad Morrison whose wife Monica had been conspicuously absent from company events lately. "I thought you might need time to process this," Jessa said, sliding her phone into her purse. "Process what? You've made your position clear. Marriage is a contract, and you want to renegotiate the terms. I'm agreeing to your terms." I signaled the waiter for the check. "Unless there's something else you wanted to discuss?" The drive home was silent except for the hum of our Honda's engine and the occasional buzz of Jessa's phone. She kept stealing glances at me, probably wondering why I wasn't falling apart. The truth was simple. I'd been falling apart for months, watching my wife transform into someone I didn't recognize. Tonight, she'd just made it official. Our house sat on Maple Street in one of those suburbs that looked perfect from the outside. 2 stories, colonial style, with a front porch I'd designed myself during better times. The mortgage was in both our names, but I'd made every payment for the past 3 years while Jessa's career found its footing. "Are you really okay with this?" she asked as I unlocked the front door. "Are you?" I countered. She didn't answer, just headed upstairs to our bedroom. I heard the shower running, then the blow dryer, then the soft click of her laptop opening. By the time I brushed my teeth and changed into pajamas, she was propped against the headboard, typing furiously. I pretended to read a book about sustainable architecture while watching her reflection in the dark window. She was texting someone, her fingers flying across the screen with the kind of urgency reserved for new relationships. Every few minutes, she'd smile at whatever response she'd received. Around midnight, she finally set the phone aside. "Miles?" "Yeah?" "I want you to know this isn't about you. It's about me needing space to grow." "I understand," I said, not looking up from my book. "Do you? Because you're acting strange." I closed the book and turned off my bedside lamp. "Good night, Jessa." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Good night." I lay in the dark, listening to her breathe, thinking about the text message I'd seen her typing earlier. Something about he said yes and starting tomorrow. I thought about Chad Morrison and his Range Rover. I thought about the gallery opening invitation I'd declined last week because Jessa said she needed me home for a romantic evening that never materialized. Most of all, I thought about Helena Trenwall, the curator who'd sent that invitation. We'd been friends in college before Jessa decided my social life needed streamlining. Helena had laughed at my jokes back then, actually listened when I talked about my work, never once checked my phone or questioned why I was 5 minutes late coming home. Jessa's phone buzzed again. She reached for it immediately, the screen's glow illuminating her face in the darkness. I smiled and rolled over. Tomorrow was going to be interesting. The next morning, Jessa was gone before I woke up. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. "Early meeting, coffee's made, Jay." No love or XOXO like the old days. Just an initial, like she was already practicing her signature for divorce papers. I poured myself coffee and found Helena's invitation tucked behind the microwave where I'd hidden it 3 weeks ago. The gallery opening was tonight. Contemporary sculptures by local artists, wine and cheese, the kind of cultural event Jessa used to mock as pretentious nonsense for people with too much time and money. I texted Helena, "Still room for one more tonight?" Her response came back within minutes. "Always room for you, Miles. Looking forward to catching up." No games, no hidden meanings, just honest communication. I'd forgotten what that felt like. My assistant Jamie knocked on my office door around 10 that morning. She was 26, fresh out of design school, with bright purple hair and enough energy to power a small city. "Boss, you look different today," she said, setting a stack of blueprints on my desk. "Different how?" "I don't know. Lighter? Like someone lifted a weight off your shoulders." She paused. "Everything okay at home?" Jamie had worked for me for 2 years. She'd seen Jessa's surprise visits to the office, witnessed the way my wife would interrupt client meetings to discuss dinner plans or complain about household issues that couldn't wait until evening. She'd also seen me decline every social invitation, skip every office happy hour, and eat lunch alone at my desk because Jessa expected me home by 6:30 sharp. "Things are changing," I said. "For the better, I think." "Good. You deserve better than—" She caught herself. "Sorry, not my business." "It's okay, and you're right." That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I left work early. Not for a family emergency or a doctor's appointment, but because I wanted to. I stopped by the bookstore downtown, bought a novel I'd been meaning to read, then walked through Riverside Park just to remember what sunshine felt like on a Tuesday. My phone rang around 4. "Jessa." "Where are you?" she demanded. "I called your office and Jamie said you'd left." "I'm at the park." "The park? Why?" "Because it's a beautiful day and I felt like taking a walk." Silence. Then, "Well, I'm having dinner with some colleagues tonight. Work stuff. I'll be late." "Okay, have fun." That's it? Just okay?" "What else would you like me to say?" Another pause. "Nothing. Never mind. I'll see you later." The line went quiet. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and continued walking. The gallery opening was everything I'd forgotten I enjoyed. Real conversations about art and architecture, people who asked thoughtful questions and listened to the answers. Helena looked stunning in a simple black dress, her dark hair pulled back to show off earrings I remembered from college. "You came," she said, appearing at my elbow with 2 glasses of wine. "You invited me." "I've invited you to dozens of events over the years. This is the first time you've actually shown up." She was right. Jessa had made sure of that, finding reasons why I couldn't attend gallery openings, couldn't meet friends for drinks, couldn't maintain any social connections that didn't revolve around her work events or her chosen circle of acquaintances. "Things are different now," I said. "Good different or bad different?" "Too early to tell?" We spent the next hour walking through the gallery, discussing the sculptures, the artists' techniques, the way light and shadow transformed each piece depending on your perspective. Helena had always been brilliant, but success had given her a confidence that made her even more attractive. She ran this place, knew every artist personally, could discuss the historical context of contemporary sculpture without sounding pretentious. "I miss this," I said, as we paused in front of a twisted metal piece that somehow conveyed both motion and stillness. "The art?" "The conversation. Having someone actually listen when I talk?" Helena studied my face. "Miles, is everything all right at home?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Jessa. "Where are you? Your car isn't in the driveway." I showed Helena the message. "My wife seems to think I need permission to leave the house." "Do you?" "Not anymore." I texted back. "At the gallery opening downtown. Home later." Jessa's response was immediate. "What gallery opening? You hate art events." "The one you said was pretentious nonsense. Turns out I like pretentious nonsense." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "We need to talk when you get home." Helena had been reading over my shoulder. Trouble? Probably, but not the kind I used to worry about. We continued through the gallery, and I found myself relaxing in a way I hadn't experienced in years. No one was monitoring my conversations, timing my interactions, or making subtle comments about how long I'd been talking to any particular person. I was just Miles, not Jessa's husband or someone's +1 or a supporting character in someone else's story. Around 9, Helena walked me to my car. "This was nice," she said. "We should do it again sometime." "I'd like that." "Even if it causes trouble at home?" I thought about Jessa's text messages, her dinner with colleagues, the way she'd been checking her phone during our anniversary dinner. Especially if it causes trouble at home. Helena smiled. Then I'll make sure to invite you to more pretentious nonsense. The drive home took 15 minutes, but I stretched it to 30, taking the long way through neighborhoods I'd helped design. Some of my buildings looked better at night, their clean lines softened by landscape lighting and the warm glow from windows. Architecture was about creating spaces where people could live their best lives. I'd forgotten that applied to architects too. Jessa was waiting in the living room when I walked in, still dressed in her work clothes, but with her hair down and her makeup refreshed. She'd positioned herself on the couch with a glass of wine and a magazine, trying to look casual. "How was your dinner?" I asked, hanging my keys on the hook by the door. "Fine. How was the gallery thing?" "Educational. Helena sends her regards." Jessa's wineglass paused halfway to her lips. Helena Trenwall, the curator. We went to college together, remember?" "Vaguely." She set down her wine with deliberate care. "I didn't know you two kept in touch." "We didn't. She's been inviting me to events for years, but I never went." "Why not?" I looked at my wife, really looked at her. The woman I'd married 12 years ago had been spontaneous, adventurous, excited about building a life together. This woman was calculating every word, every expression, treating our conversation like a negotiation. "Because you always had other plans for me," I said. "That's not fair, isn't it? When's the last time I went anywhere without you? When's the last time I had a conversation you didn't monitor or interrupt?" Jessa stood up, smoothing her skirt. "I never stopped you from having friends. You didn't have to stop me. You just made it clear that my friendships weren't as important as your comfort level. And now that we have an open marriage, you're going to punish me by running back to old girlfriends?" "Helena isn't an old girlfriend. She's a friend. The kind of friend I used to have before I got married." "Before you got married to me, you mean?" I headed toward the stairs. "I'm going to bed." "Miles, wait." Jessa followed me into the hallway. "I know this is an adjustment, but we need to set some ground rules." I stopped at the bottom of the staircase. "Ground rules?" "About how this is going to work. Communication, boundaries, that sort of thing." "You mean rules for me?" "Rules for both of us." "What rules are you planning to follow, Jessa?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. We both knew she'd already broken every rule that mattered. "We'll talk about it tomorrow," she said finally. "Sure," I said, climbing the stairs. "Tomorrow." But I was already planning my next conversation with Helena. The next few weeks established a pattern. Jessa would leave early for work meetings, come home late from client dinners, and spend her evenings texting with barely concealed excitement. I would go to the office, have lunch with Jamie, and accept social invitations I'd been declining for years. Helena and I fell into an easy rhythm of museum visits, coffee dates, and long walks through downtown. She never asked intrusive questions about my marriage, never pushed for more than I was ready to give, and never once checked her phone while I was talking. Being with her felt like remembering who I used to be. "You're different," Jamie observed one Thursday afternoon. "Happier." "The open marriage is working out better than expected," I said. "Open marriage?" Jamie's purple eyebrows shot up. "Jessa agreed to that?" "She suggested it, actually." "Huh." Jamie processed this information with the speed of someone who'd grown up with social media. "And you're seeing someone?" "Helena Trenwall. She runs the Contemporary Art Gallery downtown." "The tall brunette with the amazing cheekbones? Nice upgrade, boss." I was about to respond when my phone rang. Jessa. "Miles, we need to talk," she said without preamble. "I'm at work." "It's about the open marriage thing. I've been thinking, and maybe we should put some limits on it." "What kind of limits?" "Like maybe we should only see people the other person approves of first." I looked at Jamie, who was pretending not to eavesdrop while organizing blueprints with unnecessary intensity. "That defeats the purpose of an open marriage," I said. "I just think we should be more careful about who we let into our lives." "You mean I should be more careful?" "That's not what I said." "It's what you meant." I checked the time. "Jessa, I have a client meeting in 10 minutes. Can we discuss this tonight?" "Fine. But Miles? This Helena person? What about her?" "Just be careful." I looked her up online. She's been divorced twice. So maybe she's not the most stable person to get involved with right now. I hung up and stared at my phone. Jamie had abandoned all pretense of working and was watching me with undisguised curiosity. "Let me guess," she said. "The open marriage is only open when it benefits Jessa." Something like that. "Want some advice from someone who's never been married?" "Sure. Document everything. Screenshots, emails, text messages. Trust me on this one." That evening, I took Jamie's advice. I went through my phone and saved every text message from the past month, including Jessa's original open marriage, take it or leave it demand, and her subsequent attempts to control my social life. Then I set up a separate email account and started forwarding everything there. Jessa came home around 9, carrying takeout from an expensive sushi place across town. She was glowing in that way people do when they're having great conversations with someone new. "How was your day?" she asked, unpacking California rolls and salmon teriyaki. "Productive. How was yours?" "Busy. Chad and I had to work late on the Morrison Industries account." Chad Morrison's company was called Morrison Industries. Jessa was having an affair with a man so narcissistic he'd named his business after himself. "Sounds complicated," I said, opening a bottle of wine. "It is, but Chad's really good at managing complex client relationships." "I'm sure he is," I thought. "Speaking of relationships," Jessa continued, "I've been thinking about what we discussed earlier. The approval process for dating partners? It's not an approval process. It's just common courtesy. Like I'd want to meet Helena before things get too serious. Things aren't serious with Helena. But they could be, right? I mean, you're spending a lot of time with her." I set down my wine glass. "Jessa, how much time are you spending with Chad?" Her chopsticks paused halfway to her mouth. "That's different. We work together. And you have dinner together, and you text him at midnight, and you come home glowing like a teenager with a crush." "I don't glow." "You're glowing right now." She put down her chopsticks and folded her hands in her lap. "Miles, I think we need to be honest with each other." "I'm listening." "I've developed feelings for Chad, real feelings, and I think he feels the same way about me." There it was, the truth I'd been waiting for her to admit. "Okay," I said. "Okay. You wanted an open marriage so you could explore your feelings for Chad. I get it. It's not that simple. Isn't it?" Jessa stood up and started pacing around the kitchen. "I didn't plan for this to happen. Chad and I have been working closely together for months, and there's this connection, this chemistry. What about his wife? What about her? Does Monica know about this connection and chemistry?" Jessa's face flushed. "That's between Chad and Monica." "And what about us? Is there still an us, or are you just keeping me around until you figure out if Chad's going to leave his wife?" "That's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed, and it came out sharper than I'd intended. "You ambush me with an open marriage ultimatum on our anniversary, spend the next month having an affair with your boss, and now you want to lecture me about fairness? I'm not having an affair. We agreed to an open marriage. After you'd already started seeing him." Jessa stopped pacing. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm not stupid, Jessa. The late nights, the new clothes, the way you've been checking your phone constantly for months. You didn't want an open marriage. You wanted permission to continue doing what you were already doing." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she grabbed her purse from the counter. "I'm staying at my sister's tonight," she said. "Tell Sam I said hello." After she left, I finished my wine and called Helena. "How do you feel about going public?" I asked when she answered. "Public how?" "There's a charity fundraiser at the country club this weekend. Jessa and I usually go together, but I think I'd prefer different company this year." Helena was quiet for a moment. "Are you sure about this, Miles? Once we show up together at a public event, people will talk." "Let them talk." "And Jessa?" I thought about my wife's glowing face, her midnight text messages, her sudden need to stay at her sister's house. "Jessa made her choice," I said. "Now I'm making mine." The charity fundraiser was held at Riverside Country Club, the kind of place where memberships got passed down through generations and the waitstaff knew everyone's drink preferences. Jessa and I had attended this event for the past 5 years, mostly because her PR firm handled publicity for several of the benefiting organizations. I arrived with Helena at 7:30, fashionably late, but not dramatically so. She wore a navy blue dress that complemented her dark hair, and she'd chosen jewelry that was elegant without being flashy. She understood the social dynamics of events like this, knew how to make an impression without causing a scene. "Nervous?" she asked as we walked toward the entrance. "Should I be?" "Well, you're about to introduce your new girlfriend to a room full of people who know your wife." "You're not my girlfriend," I said. "You're my date." "Is there a difference?" I held the door open for her. "We're about to find out." The country club's ballroom was decorated with white flowers and soft lighting, designed to make everyone look younger and more attractive than they actually were. I recognized most of the faces from previous years: local business owners, political figures, social climbers who treated charity events like networking opportunities. We'd been there less than 5 minutes when I spotted Jessa across the room. She was standing near the bar with Chad Morrison, both of them dressed like they were auditioning for a magazine spread about successful couples. Chad wore a perfectly tailored tuxedo, and Jessa had chosen a red dress that probably cost more than most people's car payments. "Is that her?" Helena asked, following my gaze. "That's her. She's beautiful." "Yes, she is." "And the man with her?" "Chad Morrison, her boss, and according to her, her soulmate." Helena studied them for a moment. "They look good together." "They should. They've been practicing." We made our way through the crowd, stopping to chat with people I'd met at previous events. Helena was charming without being overeager, asked thoughtful questions about people's work and families, and managed to make everyone feel like the most interesting person in the room. I'd forgotten how much I enjoyed watching someone I cared about succeed in social situations. Around 8:30, we ended up at the same cocktail table as Tom and Lisa Chen, a couple I'd known since college. Tom was a lawyer, Lisa worked in marketing, and they'd always been the kind of friends who told you the truth even when you didn't want to hear it. "Miles," Lisa said, giving me a hug. "Where's Jessa tonight?" "She's here," I said, nodding toward the bar, "with her colleague, Chad Morrison." Tom followed my gaze and raised an eyebrow. "Colleague?" "It's complicated," I said. "Lisa, Tom, I'd like you to meet Helena Trenwall. She runs the Contemporary Art Gallery downtown." We spent the next 20 minutes discussing Helena's latest exhibition, Tom's recent cases, and Lisa's new marketing campaign for a local nonprofit. It was the kind of easy, intelligent conversation I'd missed during my years of attending events as Jessa's plus one, making small talk about her work while my own interests got relegated to brief, polite inquiries. "I'm going to freshen up," Helena said around 9 o'clock. "Back in a few minutes." After she left, Lisa leaned across the table. "Miles, what's going on?" "What do you mean?" "You show up with a gorgeous, intelligent woman who clearly adores you, while your wife is practically sitting in another man's lap across the room, and you're acting like this is perfectly normal." Tom nodded. "We've been watching this train wreck for the past hour. Jessa keeps looking over here like she wants to start a fight, and Chad Morrison looks like he's trying to figure out whether he should be jealous or relieved." "Jessa and I have an open marriage now," I said. Lisa's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. "Since when?" "Since our anniversary last month. Her idea." "And you agreed to this?" "I did." Tom leaned back in his chair. "Miles, buddy, I've been practicing family law for 15 years. Open marriages that start with ultimatums don't end well. This one might be different." "Different how?" Before I could answer, Helena returned from the restroom, and I noticed Jessa approaching our table from the opposite direction. She'd left Chad at the bar and was walking toward us with the determined stride of someone about to make a point. "Miles," she said, arriving at our table with a bright, artificial smile. "I didn't know you were coming tonight. I always come to this event. With me." "Not this year." Jessa's smile flickered. She looked at Helena, then at Tom and Lisa, calculating how much of a scene she could make without damaging her professional reputation. "I don't believe we've met," she said to Helena, extending her hand. "I'm Jessa Roven, Miles's wife." "Helena Trenwall," Helena replied, shaking her hand with perfect composure. "Miles has told me so much about you." "Has he? That's interesting, because he's told me almost nothing about you." The temperature at our table dropped about 10 degrees. Tom and Lisa exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable with the direction this conversation was heading. "Well," Helena said smoothly, "we're still getting to know each other, but Miles is a fascinating man. You're lucky to have him." "Yes," Jessa said, her smile growing sharper. "I am." She stood there for another moment, waiting for someone to fill the awkward silence. When no one did, she turned back to me. "We should talk later," she said. "Should we?" "Yes, we should." After she left, Tom whistled softly. That was uncomfortable. "She's not happy about the open marriage arrangement," I said. "No," Lisa agreed. "She's not." The rest of the evening passed without incident, but I could feel Jessa's attention like a spotlight. Every time I laughed at something Helena said, every time we danced, every time we appeared to be enjoying ourselves, I could sense my wife's growing frustration across the room. Around 11, Helena and I decided to leave. We were walking toward the exit when Chad Morrison intercepted us in the lobby. "Miles," he said, extending his hand. "Chad Morrison. I don't think we've been formally introduced." Up close, Chad was exactly what I'd expected. Tall, confident, with the kind of aggressive handshake that was supposed to establish dominance. His cologne was expensive and applied liberally, and his smile had the practiced sincerity of someone who sold things for a living. "Chad," I said. "Helena Trenwall?" "Pleasure." Chad said, barely glancing at Helena. Miles, I was hoping we could chat sometime about Jessa. What about her? Well, this situation is a little unusual. I thought it might be good for us to clear the air, man to man. I looked at this person who'd been having an affair with my wife, who'd encouraged her to blow up our marriage, who was now standing in front of me like we were going to be buddies. The air seems pretty clear to me, I said. I just want you to know that my intentions toward Jessa are honorable. Your intentions? I care about her, a lot, and I think she cares about me too. Helena touched my arm gently, a reminder to stay calm. I looked at Chad Morrison, with his perfect hair and his expensive tuxedo and his complete lack of self-awareness. Chad, I said, you're married. That's complicated. Is it? Monica and I have been having problems for years. We're probably headed for divorce anyway. Probably? Well, we haven't made any final decisions yet. I nodded slowly. So you're having an affair with my wife while you figure out whether you want to divorce your own wife. It's not an affair. You have an open marriage. We do. And you? Chad's confident smile faltered slightly. Like I said, it's complicated. Right. I looked at Helena. Ready to go? Absolutely. We walked past Chad toward the exit. Behind us, I heard him call out, Miles, we should really talk about this. I didn't turn around. In the parking lot, Helena was quiet until we reached my car. That was interesting, she said finally. That's one word for it. He's not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone more substantial. If you're going to blow up a marriage, it should be for someone extraordinary. He seems ordinary. I started the car and pulled out of the parking space. Maybe that's the point. Maybe Jessa wanted ordinary with better packaging. And what do you want? I looked at Helena, sitting beside me in the passenger seat, beautiful and intelligent and completely present in the moment. I want extraordinary, I said. She smiled. Good answer. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages from Jessa. The messages started angry, progressed to hurt, and ended with threats about lawyers and divorce proceedings. I made coffee, read through them all, and forwarded everything to my separate email account. Then I called Tom Chen. I need a lawyer, I said when he answered. I figured you might. When do you want to meet? How about today? Tom Chen's law office occupied the top floor of a downtown building I'd helped design 5 years earlier. The irony wasn't lost on me as I sat in his conference room, looking out at a city skyline that included several of my architectural projects, preparing to dismantle the life I'd built with Jessa. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, Tom said, spreading documents across the mahogany table. Jessa demanded an open marriage, you agreed, and now she wants to control who you see while continuing her relationship with Chad Morrison. That's the simplified version. And you've been documenting everything. I handed him a folder containing printed screenshots of text messages, emails, and photos from the charity event. Jamie suggested I keep records. Tom flipped through the documents, occasionally raising an eyebrow or making notes in the margins. As a family lawyer, he'd probably seen every variation of marital dysfunction, but something about my situation seemed to amuse him. Miles, this is either the most straightforward divorce case I've ever handled or the most complicated. I can't decide which. Why complicated? Because Jessa essentially gave you written permission to see other people, then got angry when you actually did it. Most judges would find that interesting. And straightforward? Because she's clearly been having an affair for months, possibly longer. The open marriage demand was just her way of legitimizing what she was already doing. Tom closed the folder and leaned back in his chair. What do you want, Miles? Full divorce, legal separation, or are you hoping to work things out? I thought about Jessa's text messages from the night before, her threats about taking half of everything I'd worked for, or her assumption that I'd eventually cave to her demands like I always had. I want out, I said. Cleanly, fairly, but completely out. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Over the next hour, Tom outlined a strategy that was both elegant and ruthless. We'd file for divorce citing irreconcilable differences, use Jessa's own text messages to establish that she'd initiated the marital breakdown, and request an equitable distribution of assets based on actual financial contributions to the marriage. The house? I asked. You designed it, you paid for it, and you can prove both things. She'll get her share of the equity, but you'll keep the property. Her car? In her name, her responsibility. The joint accounts? We'll freeze them today. Everything gets divided according to documented contributions. By the time I left Tom's office, I felt lighter than I had in months. Not happy exactly, but clear about the path forward. I'd spent years accommodating Jessa's moods, her demands, her need to control every aspect of our shared life. Now I was going to find out what my life looked like without those constraints. I called Helena from the parking garage. "How did it go?" she asked. "Better than expected. Are you free for lunch?" "Always. Where do you want to meet?" "Somewhere public," I said. I have a feeling Jessa's going to be looking for me. We met at Riverside Cafe, a popular spot downtown that attracted a mix of business people, artists, and tourists. Helena was already seated at a window table when I arrived, reading a book about contemporary sculpture and sipping iced tea. "You look different," she said as I sat down. "Different how?" "Resolved, like you've made a decision and you're comfortable with it." "I filed for divorce this morning." Helena set down her book and studied my face. "How do you feel about that?" "Relieved, mostly. A little sad about how it ended, but not surprised." "And scared?" "About what?" "About starting over, about being alone, about whatever comes next." I reached across the table and took her hand. "I'm not alone." "Miles, we've been seeing each other for 6 weeks. That's not very long in the grand scheme of things." "Long enough to know I'd rather spend time with you than anyone else." "Even if it complicates your divorce?" "Especially if it complicates my divorce." Helena smiled, but there was something cautious in her expression. "What if this is just rebound? What if you're confusing gratitude with something deeper? What if I'm not? Then we take it one day at a time and see what happens." "I can live with that." We ordered lunch and spent the next hour talking about everything except my marriage. Helena told me about her upcoming exhibition, her plans to expand the gallery, her complicated relationship with her parents who'd never understood her career choice. I told her about my latest architectural project, my ideas for sustainable building design, my dream of starting my own firm someday. It was the kind of conversation I'd been missing for years. Two adults sharing their thoughts, their ambitions, their fears, without judgment or competition. With Jessa, every conversation had been a negotiation. With Helena, talking felt like collaboration. Around 2 o'clock, my phone started ringing. "Jessa." "Are you going to answer that?" Helena asked. "Not today." The phone stopped ringing, then immediately started again. She's persistent. She's panicking. Because of the divorce? Because she's losing control. After lunch, I walked Helena back to the gallery, then drove to my office. Jamie was waiting with a stack of messages and an expression of barely contained excitement. "Boss, you've had 14 phone calls in the past 2 hours. All from your wife." "What did you tell her?" "That you were in meetings and couldn't be disturbed." "Good." "She seemed upset." "I'm sure she did." Jamie leaned against my desk. "So it's really happening, the divorce? It's really happening. And you're okay?" I looked around my office at the architectural drawings on the walls, the projects I'd completed, the life I'd built through my own work and talent. For the first time in years, I felt like I owned my space instead of just occupying it. "I'm better than okay," I said. That evening, I came home to find Jessa's car in the driveway and every light in the house blazing. She was in the kitchen, surrounded by legal documents and empty wine bottles, her laptop open to what looked like a divorce attorney's website. "We need to talk," she said without looking up. "Tom Chen said you'd probably want to." "Tom Chen?" Her head snapped up. "You hired Tom Chen?" "I hired a lawyer, yes." "Miles, this is crazy. We don't need lawyers. We can work this out ourselves." "Can we?" "Of course we can. We're adults. We can have a rational conversation about what we both want." I sat down across from her at the kitchen table. "Okay, what do you want?" "I want us to slow down. Take some time to think about this. Maybe try counseling." "And Chad?" Jessa's jaw tightened. "What about Chad?" "Are you going to stop seeing him while we try counseling?" It's not that simple." "It's a yes or no question, Jessa." She poured herself another glass of wine with shaking hands. "Chad and I have a connection, a real connection. I can't just turn that off." "But you want me to turn off my connection with Helena." "That's different." "How?" "Because Chad and I work together. We have a professional relationship that predates our personal relationship." "You mean your affair predates your open marriage ultimatum?" "It wasn't an affair. We were just close friends." I looked at my wife, at the woman I'd loved for 12 years, watching her rewrite history in real time to justify her choices. "Jessa," I said quietly, "do you want to be married to me?" "Of course I do." "Do you want to be married to me, or do you want to keep me around as backup while you explore your relationship with Chad?" She was quiet for a long moment, staring into her wine glass like it might contain answers. "I want both," she said finally. "I know you do, but that's not how marriage works." "It could be. Lots of couples have open marriages. Lots of couples also get divorced." Jessa looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "Miles, please, can't we at least try to make this work?" I thought about the past month, about the way she'd glowed when talking about Chad, about her midnight text messages and her sudden need for space to grow. I thought about Helena, about the way I felt when I was with her, about the possibility of building something real with someone who actually wanted to be with me. "We did try," I said. "For months, maybe years. But we want different things now." "What do you want?" "I want someone who chooses me, not someone who keeps me as an option." Jessa started crying then, the kind of tears that might have swayed me 6 months ago. But I'd learned the difference between sadness and manipulation, between grief and performance. "I'm going to stay at Helena's tonight," I said, standing up from the table. "Miles, wait. The lawyers can handle the details." I packed a bag and drove across town to Helena's apartment, a converted loft above an antique store that reflected her artistic sensibilities. She answered the door in paint-stained jeans and an oversized sweater, looking more beautiful than any woman had a right to look on a Tuesday evening. "How did it go?" she asked. "About as well as expected." "And how do you feel?" I set down my bag and pulled her into my arms. "Like I'm finally moving in the right direction." "Even if you don't know where you're going?" "Especially then." She kissed me, and for the first time in months, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. 3 months later, I was engaged. Helena and I had spent the morning at Riverside Sculpture Garden, the same place where we'd had our first official date after my separation from Jessa became public knowledge. The garden was nearly empty on a Tuesday afternoon, just a few art students sketching and an elderly couple sharing a bench near the fountain. "I have something to ask you," I said as we stopped in front of the twisted metal sculpture we'd discussed on our first gallery visit. Helena turned to face me, and I could see in her expression that she already knew what was coming. I dropped to one knee right there on the gravel path, pulling out the ring I'd been carrying for 2 weeks. "Helena Trenwall, will you marry me?" She started crying before I finished the question. "Yes," she said, laughing and sobbing at the same time. "Yes, absolutely yes." I slipped the ring onto her finger, a simple solitaire that caught the afternoon light perfectly, and kissed her while a group of art students applauded from across the garden. "Should we call people?" Helena asked as we walked back to the car, both of us grinning like teenagers. "Let's just enjoy it for a few hours first." But Helena couldn't contain her excitement. By the time we got back to her apartment, she'd already posted a photo on social media. Our hands intertwined, the engagement ring sparkling, the sculpture garden blurred in the background. The caption read, "He asked, I said yes, and now we're planning our future together." Within an hour, the post had dozens of likes and comments from Helena's friends, colleagues, and family members. My phone started buzzing with congratulatory messages from people I hadn't heard from in months. Around 6 o'clock, Jamie called. "Boss, I just saw Helena's post. Congratulations." "Thanks, Jamie." "Have you told Jessa yet?" I looked at Helena, who was showing her ring to her sister via video chat, practically glowing with happiness. "Not yet." "Might want to get ahead of that one. Social media moves fast." Jamie was right. I texted Jessa. "Helena and I are engaged. Thought you should hear it from me first." The response came back immediately. "We need to talk. Now. The lawyers can handle whatever needs to be discussed. This isn't about lawyers. This is about us. There is no us anymore, Jessa." My phone rang. I declined the call. It rang again. I turned it off. "Trouble?" Helena asked, finishing her call with her sister. "Nothing I can't handle." We spent the evening celebrating quietly. Dinner at our favorite restaurant, a bottle of champagne, plans for a small wedding in the spring. Helena wanted something simple and elegant, maybe at the gallery with close friends and family. I wanted whatever made her happy. Around 10 o'clock, we decided to extend the celebration to the rooftop bar at the Riverside Hotel, a trendy spot downtown that attracted young professionals and offered spectacular views of the city. Helena had changed into a black dress that showed off her engagement ring, and I'd put on the navy blazer she'd bought me for my birthday. The rooftop was busy but not crowded, with small groups clustered around cocktail tables and couples sharing the outdoor sofas near the railing. We found a table with a view of the river and ordered drinks, champagne for Helena, whiskey for me. "To new beginnings," Helena said, raising her glass. "To choosing the right person," I replied. We were halfway through our drinks when I spotted them. Jessa and Chad emerging from the elevator, both looking like they'd been arguing. Jessa's hair was disheveled, and Chad's usually perfect appearance was slightly rumpled. They scanned the rooftop until Jessa's eyes found mine. "This isn't a coincidence," I said to Helena. "Should we leave?" "No, we were here first." Jessa and Chad approached our table with the determined stride of people who'd rehearsed this confrontation. Other patrons were starting to notice, sensing the kind of drama that made for good social media content. "Miles," Jessa said, stopping directly in front of our table. "We need to talk." "About what?" "About this." She gestured at Helena's ring. "About what you're doing." "I'm having drinks with my fiancé." The word fiancé hit Jessa like a physical blow. She swayed slightly, and Chad put a steadying hand on her arm. "You can't be serious about this," Chad said. "You've known her for 3 months." "I've known her for 20 years. We went to college together." "That's not the same thing as knowing someone now." I looked at Chad Morrison, still perfectly groomed despite his rumpled appearance, still convinced that his opinion mattered in my personal life. "Chad, how long have you been divorced?" "I'm not divorced yet." "Right. You're still married to Monica while you're here with my soon-to-be ex-wife, lecturing me about relationship timing." A few people at nearby tables had stopped their own conversations to listen. Someone was discreetly holding up a phone, probably recording. "This is different," Jessa said. "Chad and I have been working together for over a year. We built a relationship slowly, professionally." "You built an affair slowly," I corrected, "while you were married to me." "It wasn't an affair. We were just friends until you agreed to the open marriage." Helena reached across the table and took my hand. "Miles, maybe we should go?" "No," I said, not taking my eyes off Jessa. "I want to hear this. I want to understand how a year-long emotional affair followed by a 3-month physical affair is more legitimate than my engagement to someone I've actually known for decades." "Because you're doing this to hurt me," Jessa said, her voice rising. "You're marrying her to get back at me for Chad." The rooftop had gone quiet, except for the ambient noise of traffic below and the soft jazz playing through the sound system. Everyone was watching now, phones out, capturing what was clearly going to be the most dramatic breakup story of the week. "Jessa," I said, standing up from the table, "I'm marrying Helena because I love her, because she makes me happy, because when I imagine my future, she's the person I want to share it with." "But what about us? What about our history? What about it?" 12 years, Miles. We were married for 12 years. And you ended it, on our anniversary, over pasta, because you wanted to have an affair with your boss. I wanted an open marriage. You wanted permission to cheat without consequences." Chad stepped forward, puffing out his chest like he was going to defend Jessa's honor. "You don't get to talk to her like that. I can talk to my wife however I want. Ex-wife. Soon-to-be ex-wife. And only because she chose you over me." "She didn't choose me over you. She chose freedom." I looked at Chad, then at Jessa, then at the crowd of people recording our conversation for posterity. "You're right," I said. "She chose freedom, and so did I." I pulled out my phone and opened the text message thread with Jessa from 3 months ago. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I'd like to share something with you, a text message from my wife on our 12th wedding anniversary." I held up the phone and read aloud. "I want an open marriage. Take it or leave it." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. My response, I continued, was, "I'll take it." More murmurs, a few chuckles. 3 months later, I'm engaged to someone else, and my wife is screaming that it's not what she meant. I looked directly at Jessa. "You should have been more specific." The crowd erupted in applause and laughter. Someone shouted, "She got served." Another person yelled, "Plot twist." Jessa's face went white, then red, then white again. She looked around at all the phones pointed in her direction, at the crowd of strangers who were now part of her personal drama. "You're humiliating me," she whispered. "No," I said. "You're humiliating yourself. I'm just refusing to be humiliated with you." Chad grabbed Jessa's arm. "Come on, let's get out of here." "Wait," Jessa said, pulling away from him. She looked at me with tears streaming down her face. "Miles, please, can we go somewhere private and talk about this?" "There's nothing left to talk about. There has to be. We can't end like this." I looked at my wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, standing in front of me in her designer dress, crying in front of a crowd of strangers, finally understanding that her actions had consequences she couldn't control. "We already ended, Jessa. 3 months ago. Over anniversary pasta. This is just the epilogue." Security guards appeared, drawn by the commotion. They approached Chad and Jessa with the polite but firm demeanor of people who'd broken up plenty of rooftop arguments. "Folks, we're going to need you to keep it down or take this somewhere else," one of them said. "They're leaving," I said. Chad looked like he wanted to argue, but Jessa was already walking toward the elevator. He followed her, and the crowd parted to let them through. As the elevator doors closed, I could hear scattered applause and someone saying, "That was better than reality TV." Helena and I sat back down at our table. The other patrons gradually returned to their own conversations, though I could see people still glancing in our direction and typing on their phones. "Well," Helena said, taking a sip of her champagne, "that was intense. Are you okay? Are you?" I thought about it. 3 months ago, a public confrontation like that would have left me shaken, embarrassed, second-guessing every decision. Tonight, I felt calm, clear, and completely certain about my choices. "I'm perfect," I said. Helena smiled and raised her glass. "To being more specific?" "To reading the fine print." We clinked glasses as the first drops of rain began to fall, washing the city clean below us.